Hey friends, welcome back for another magical movie review. My name is Magic Molly, or Magic by Molly. We are continuing our Harry Potter series with the next movie, Order of the Phoenix. So if you haven't seen the other 4 magical movie reviews, definitely head on over to my page and catch up. And while you're over there, go ahead and click that subscribe button. But for those of you who haven't been here for a magical movie review before, or it's been a while since you've watched one, we break things down into 5 major sections. We've got magical recap, where I bring you the quickest recap or summary of the movie that I can to catch you up. We also dive into magical moments, which are things that are special or really entertaining for me in the movie, along with enchanting efforts, which are things that don't quite land well with me or leave big question marks over my head. Then we'll select a BMP, or a very magical person, for the film. And then we'll end it all off with my rankings for the series that we're in. So we'll rank the Harry Potter movies that we've been able to watch so far. You can tell I'm into this episode because I'm wearing my Luna shirt. I don't know if you can really even see the top lettering there. It's yellow against the pink background, so that's hard to see. Don't worry, you're just as sane as I am, which is one of the most iconic lines, but it's also one of the most iconic Luna lines, which we'll get to in just a moment. First, we're going to head on into our magical recap. Yes, I did write it down, and I'm not memorizing these, so I'm going to be reading off my phone, so I apologize in advance. Harry and Dudley are at it again, but Harry ends up saving Dudley's life from Dementors with the trusty old Expecto Patronum, except this time it gets him into trouble with underage magic rules, but he gets out of that since it was in self-defense anyway. Harry sees Sirius again just in time to head back to school and feel misunderstood by everyone since no one believes him that Voldemort is back and he killed Cedric Diggory. Umbridge joins the staff from the Ministry and is trying to keep the kids from learning defensive magic and slowly starts taking over the school. Harry and the gang are fed up with this and form Dumbledore's army to be ready for anything that comes their way, since nobody else is teaching them. Well, that happens because Harry has a dream that Sirius is being tortured by the Dark Lord, and a handful of the DA goes to London to save him. Turns out it's a trap, and they get Harry to try to help the Death Eater steal something, but their plan is foiled by the Order of the Phoenix members. Unfortunately, Bellatrix Lestrange is a murderous bitch and kills Sirius, who is also his cousin, by the way, so that's some messed up family drama. Harry and Voldemort find each other, but Dumbledore swoops in to save Harry. Harry gets possessed anyway and ends up telling the Dark Lord to fuck off. Everyone sees Voldy is back and believe Harry now, so everybody believes him, but Harry is now without a godfather and has to go back to the Dursleys. That was weirdly a tongue twister for me. I'm not really sure why. I really enjoyed this movie. It's got some of my new favorite characters in it and some new villains, which we'll talk about now in our magical moments. Going into it, just an overall theme that's a magical moment for me, which I think is an unpopular opinion. A lot of people don't like Harry in this movie because he's very angsty. He's got kind of an attitude problem with his friends and with authority, and that's not the Harry that we're used to seeing. And I oddly find it more endearing. I actually like Harry a little bit more in this movie than I have in previous movies because I feel like it's more real. Like, he just watched somebody die and everybody's expecting him to be the same old Harry he's always been. Somebody that bounces back quickly, somebody that goes with the flow, starts doing the next thing, and that's not always the case. He needs some time to process. He's got just people in his life that don't really understand, and it's taking him a while to let them in and help him. And I find it endearing, I feel like is the wrong word, but it's the only word that I can think of that really accurately represents like how I feel about him. Like, he's misunderstood, which makes me understand him a little bit more in a weird, ironic sense. And of course, one of the people that helps Harry the most with coming out of this depression is Luna Lovegood. So I know that she is one of the most popular characters in Harry Potter history, which is definitely understandable. She's quirky, she's unapologetically herself. She's just aesthetically pleasing from like a character standpoint. Like she's got the long blonde beautiful crazy hair, she's got its eccentric outfits and colors going on. I mean, just the Quibbler glasses, which I know is kind of her father's doing, but it fits her personality. And for someone who is so odd to the rest of the students and loony, she has more of a grasp on the world than anybody else does. And I think you can really see that in the moment when she and Harry are in the forest together feeding the Thestrals. And she says, Voldemort's plan is working, you feel like you're alone, and when you're alone, you're not as much of a threat. And that's the exact moment in the movie that Harry goes back into the school and sits with his friends and kind of regroups and lets them in. That's all Luna's doing, kind of bringing him out of that funk. Not completely, but helping him understand that this depression isn't your fault. It's a plan and it's working against you. And I think that's a little bit easier for Harry to digest and understand. I think she's also extremely empathetic in the scene where all the students meet at the Hogshead for the first DA meeting, or kind of like the interest meeting, so to speak. Either everybody's trying to discredit Harry as a future teacher for what's going to be Dumbledore's army, or they're really there just to kind of get information about what happened to Cedric, which is typical teenage drama. And he's about to walk out the door, and Luna hops in and says, is it true that you can produce a Patronus, I think is what she says. And everybody stops and just like starts listening, and Hermione's like, yeah, he can. And that gives him so much credibility. And she's the one that kind of reads the room and says, okay, well, I need to step in and help here. That really is kind of the turning moment in that meeting as well, for everybody to be like, okay, I'm in. Like, he's clearly really, really good at what he can do. On the other end of character introductions that I'm excited about, I am excited about Professor Umbridge joining the story. While everybody hates her character, and I hate her character too, don't get me wrong, but I love how much I hate her character. Like, I think Imelda Staunton, I think that's how you say her name? Yeah, Imelda Staunton, I think was perfect to play Umbridge. Like, I don't think anybody else could have done any better at absolutely hating this person who is dressed in all pink and has like a little laugh and is like, just based on face value, is clearly somebody that's supposed to portray pleasantry, but ends up being one of the worst human beings on the planet. So while yes, I hate her so much as a character, like as a villain in the story, I think she is an absolutely wonderful villain because she is so real. Like, she's such a realistic villain. Like, it's not this evil dark lord, like magical villain. It's somebody that we probably all can relate to, somebody else in our lives that is trying to keep us down or trying to control everything and like just have all of this power. Like, she's a power hungry woman who is taking advantage of her place at this school. Surprisingly, she's one of my magical moments because she is so evil and she's such a crazy good, like one of the best villains ever written, in my opinion. Also, with that, because it's directly connected with her as well, the score for this movie is one of my absolute favorites. Because of course it has like all the original songs that we're used to, but it also has Umbridge's song, and her song, surprisingly, is one of my favorites. Like, it's catchy, it's boppy, it's like like when you go to the parks, this song is constantly on repeat, but you don't really think about it because it's just so like whimsical and happy with some like deep undertones in there. So it's a perfect representation of who she is as a person. So if you haven't really thought about it before, Go back and listen to that song and think about her, and you'll see it, I promise. So Snape isn't actually in the movie very much. He's in there for the important parts, which of course is more important, but he's in some of my favorite scenes in the movie. So when Umbridge is walking around and she's doing like the evaluations of all the teachers, one, just the whole sequence is hysterical when she's like measuring Flitwick, which is just extremely racist. Like, we just breezed past that moment, which is horrible. But she asks Snape like about him applying to the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher position, and she goes, "And you were unsuccessful." And he says, "Obviously." Like, that is one of the most famous quotes from the films, just because it's so funny. And I think it's humanizing for him. Like, he has failures too, obviously. When he is teaching Harry occlumency, trying to train him to keep the Dark Lord out of his mind, I think there is, like, you can see the passion behind his eyes when he's trying to help him. And a little bit of anger too, like, because that's just how is as a motivator, as a teacher. He's not the lovey-dovey, I'm gonna coddle you until you get it right kind of teacher. But, like, you can tell that he wants Harry to get it right. And then in the moment where Harry kind of lashes out and catches a preview of what it was like for Snape in school, specifically with Harry's father, James, torturing him, essentially, literally, just hanging him upside down, that is a huge humanizing moment for Snape. Probably the first time that we've gotten that in the entire series so far. And it allows us to see literally into his mind and kind of gives us an explanation of why he is the way that he is, and also kind of makes us question idolization of James Potter as well, which is not something that you normally get. All these character arcs and kind of ebbs and flows of morality in your good characters and your evil or bad characters too. So I thought that was a magical moment, as stressful as it was to watch. Going back to, I skipped over an important one from the beginning when Harry first gets to Grimmauld Place. Of course, it truly is a magical moment for Harry to see Sirius in person again, since he hasn't really seen him since Prisoner of Azkaban, so at least, 2 years, maybe a year and a half, depending on exactly what day and time it was. Like, the moment when their eyes meet is super magical, because you can see, like, Sirius, like, perk up, like, going from, like, having a super serious conversation to seeing Harry, who he truly views as a son, is magical. But also, in the same breath, you have Molly Weasley coming out of the woodwork as well. Oddly, I think that this is a really poetic moment. And I love Molly Weasley. I love her so much. She's incredibly nurturing, and she's like your typical mom, but also like this hard-ass, badass woman as well. Like somebody that you can definitely look up to. Not that moms aren't. Moms definitely are. When she kind of breaks the eye contact between Harry and Sirius, I've always viewed that as Harry has always, or up until this moment, considered Sirius the first family that he's ever had. In that moment, I feel like I don't know if Harry realizes it, but I think in a way it's poetic to say that, like, Molly Weasley's been there the entire time. At least since day one. She literally showed you how to get onto the platform of 9 3/4, and she's been taking care of you and being a source of motherly love this entire time. It's not always appreciated by Harry, and I think Arthur Weasley, you can think of that in the same way, especially when Harry sees Arthur being tortured and ends up saving his life, and then they go back to Grimmauld Place for Christmas and they're all together. Like, that's literally your family, and Sirius is there, and you've always had that family around you, but it's not something that's always been at the forefront or explicitly said, versus like, I am your godfather, Harry. Like, I don't know, I think that that was a magical moment for me to kind of tie it all together to say, while I think it's so wonderful that Harry has a godfather in this moment now, he hasn't always been without parental figures, at least while he's been at school. So I don't think he needs to forget that. And then the last big magical moment that I have, of course, is the whole fight scene with Voldemort, Dumbledore, and Harry, I think is incredible. Adam and I were talking about it when we were watching the movie, that we were glad that it's not just like a wands connecting fight this whole time. Like, there's a lot of interactive elements with the environment, very much a lot of symbolism with Voldemort fighting with fire, Dumbledore primarily in glass, shards of glass, and Dumbledore fighting with water and with air. And I think that that speaks volumes of what kind of energies they're pulling from into this fight. And just kind of seeing, like, finally seeing the first showdown between the two of them is really, really cool. And then, of course, in the moment where Voldemort possesses Harry and basically is like trying to take him over or kill him. I'm not entirely sure what they're representing here in the movie of what Voldemort is trying to do, but the speech that Harry gives to Voldemort and ending with, "I feel sorry for you," is incredibly touching and really wonderful to see from where Harry started at the beginning of the movie, which is, woe is me, and I feel alone, and I don't have anybody to talk to, or nothing to fight for, to I have everything to fight for, and I have love in my life, and you don't, and I feel sorry for you. I think is a huge character arc for him just within this movie alone. I could go on and on about magical moments in this movie, but those are the big ones. I noticed as I was writing them down that a lot of them, actually all of the ones that I've named today, and a lot of the ones that I wrote down, of course there were some fun moments and moments that made me giggle, but most of the magical moments, the things that really stood out to me, were all about the characters and how their relationships have changed with each other, how much they've grown as individuals, and what we're able to see out of them. I think that this is a huge milestone movie that's going to change, or that does change, the direction for the rest of the story, for the rest of the movies. So with that, we'll move on to Enchanting Efforts. I honestly really didn't have any when I'm just looking at the movie. When you take into account the book, there's a lot of enchanting efforts, but we're sticking with the movie. Just things that I didn't quite enjoy, or things that left big question marks over my head. I didn't enjoy Cho Chang in this movie. I thought there was a lot of talk about how much she was going through, and like Hermione with the whole, like, Ron can't understand because you've got the emotional range of a teaspoon, which was hysterical. But they're talking about everything that Cho is going through, but you really don't see a whole lot out of her, or a whole lot of emotion. I don't know, I just didn't really enjoy her that much as a character in this movie. Like, you could have lifted that part out and left it over here and that would have been fine. I also thought, and I don't really know how they could have done it differently, but the scene with Sirius's death, I thought was very anticlimactic. Like, this is a huge moment for Harry. In his eyes, the only father he's ever had literally just died right in front of him, and he screams for like a second and then chases after Bellatrix, and then it's kind of forgotten for a little while. Like, I think I would have liked to see a little bit more come out of that, because we get the little moment with Dumbledore in his office after the fight is over with him and Harry, and even that scene is maybe 5 minutes long, and they're like, of course Harry's extremely upset and Dumbledore is taking on the blame for kind of shutting out Harry, but we're not really talking about Sirius's death I mean, Luna apologizes to him later when they see each other in the hallway, but I don't know, I feel like that fell short in the movie for me. Like, it's almost like towards the end things felt a little rushed, and they were like, oh yeah, your godfather died. Okay, sorry, okay, the movie's over. This huge moment in Harry's life is being rushed through in the movie. Another more of a question mark that I have over my head. So Fred and George are in their 7th year, right? They've already taken all their owls. They're old enough to do magic on their own, but they decide to kind of go out with a bang, and they realize that their talents are more in the joke world and the entrepreneurial world rather than the academic world. So they decide to basically blow up the Great Hall during one of the lessons, and Umbridge as well. So my understanding is that if you don't finish school, you're not allowed to practice magic, because that's the whole thing with Hagrid having gotten kicked out of school and expelled. He is not technically allowed to practice magic, which is why his wand is hidden in the umbrella. So how is it that Fred and George are able to practice magic after this whole event? Is it because they took their owls, so technically they were done and kind of just going through the motions at the end? It's not really like a they did it wrong. It was more of a, I don't really understand where the story is supposed to be going after that, or why they were allowed to do that when Hagrid wasn't, kind of thing. That's something that I think about every time I watch the movie. And then after that moment when they're trying to get to London and Umbridge catches them and Hermione tricks her into going into the Forbidden Forest, which is smart thinking on Hermione's part. The whole scene with them and Gruff and the centaurs in the forest, I feel like that was poorly done. It's known that centaurs are very intelligent creatures, and the fact that they're like whinnying and neighing in the forest at Umbridge, and they're not really using that intelligence there, I feel like it's just not a good show for what they're able to do and kind of proving that they're lesser beings. So I really didn't enjoy that particular part, but I thought the moments leading up to it were really, really good. That's really all I have for enchanting efforts. Really, there weren't very many things that I was just like, what? Or, whoa. Thinking about a VMP, I wrote down the most, and just because I was looking at all the characters and what they provided to the story, I'm gonna go with Luna Lovegood as my VMP. Without her, we wouldn't have had that reunion with Harry and his friends. We wouldn't have the credibility to form Dumbledore's army. And of course, she went with Harry to London to help save his godfather. She hardly knows Harry. Like, she's only known him for that school year, and she's already willing to go into battle with him. And of course, she just has the best quote out of all of them. Like, don't worry, you're just as sane as I am. Things that we've lost have a way of coming back to us in the end, if not in the way that we expect them. And I also appreciate that she like kind of has no filter, and she just says whatever she wants to say. Like, she doesn't have to think about it. And people have written her off as being like crazy, and yet she's dropping knowledge on everybody like throughout the entire movie, and people are taking that for granted. So I think she's the best. Now we're at the end here where we're just talking about my movie rankings so far. This go around watching everything objectively and thinking about where I'm putting my movies in these rankings, I struggled with this one and Prisoner of Azkaban. I think for nostalgia and just sheer number of pros and cons, I'm gonna stick with Prisoner of Azkaban, Order of the Phoenix, Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, and Goblet of Fire. Let me know what you think about these rankings, or if you want to show me your rankings of the movie so far in the comments below. Definitely feel free to drop them in. While you're at it, go ahead and like this video so that I can keep on going, and getting feedback from you guys is really important to make sure that I'm I'm giving you quality content and quality reviews that you guys want to keep seeing. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And if you're a fellow Instagrammer like myself and just like to share fun videos or cat pictures, that's my new favorite thing to look at lately, go ahead and follow me on Instagram at magicxmolly. Or Magic by Molly is how I say it. Alright guys, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful week and have a magical Monday.